Flight training is one of the most exciting things that you can do until one day it's not. One day you're super pumped up, ready to go, and then the next you're questioning if you even want to become a pilot. We call that burnout, and it's one of the leading causes of why people never get their pilot's license and never earn their wings. But there's good news. You don't have to fall victim to that. Today I'm going to break down why burnout happens, how to spot it early, and most importantly, I'm going to give you 6 ways that you can avoid it so that you can stay motivated and keep going. Before we talk about how to avoid burnout, let's talk about why it happens in the first place. There are 3 big reasons that I see for why student pilots get burned out. The first one, too much too fast. Trying to cram it all out in a short amount of time. A lot of students think that they need to be flying and studying all day, every single day, or they're never going to get it. The fear of them falling behind burns them out. Reason number 2 of why burnout happens is just overall physical and mental exhaustion. Flying takes a lot out of you. Think about how exhausted you are when you hop on a plane and go on vacation. You're on a commercial airline for 2 hours-ish. And then you land and you're just feeling exhausted. Now imagine actually being in the plane, flying the plane while learning all these new skills. Also on top of that, trying to balance work and family and friends and relationships. All of that just leaves you exhausted. And the final reason I see that burnout happens is frustration and plateaus. Flying is not a linear thing where you're going to gradually keep progressing. You're going to progress a lot and then level off and then maybe even progress a little bit and then improve, and then it's a big wave, a stepping stone. And oftentimes when students hit those plateaus, they can get extremely frustrated with the lack of progress. Burnout isn't just about flying too much. It's about managing your energy, your time, and just overall your mental health. So now let's get into how to fix it. Tip number 1, set a realistic training schedule. One of the biggest mistakes that I see student pilots make is overloading themselves. Some students, like I mentioned, they want to fly every single day, and then as soon as they leave the airport, they go home and study for 8 hours. And I love the passion and energy that you're bringing to it, but that's too much. That's so much. I've generally found that the sweet spot can be somewhere between flying 3 to 4 times per week. Flying every single day, if it's going to exhaust you, is actually going to hurt your progress and make you spend more time, more energy, and more money in the long run. There's something that we as instructors have to study before we can become an instructor, and that's the fundamentals of instruction. Essentially how to become a teacher. And one of the things that we learn in that is the law of diminishing returns. It gets to a point where you're not absorbing any information anymore. So flying every single day, you're not progressing because your mind is a million other places that you're diminishing those returns on your investment. 3 to 4 times seems to be the sweet spot. If you can't make that happen, still aim to fly at least 2 times per week. Think of flight training almost like going to the gym. If you're going too hard, too fast, too often, you increase your risk for injury, you increase your risk for burnout, you're gonna start dreading going to the gym because you're just doing it so much. So you wanna take a step back, you wanna give yourself that important rest, you wanna pace yourself because in the long run, you're gonna make much more progress. Tip number 2, improve your studying efficiency. Another reason why student pilots burn out is they spend so much time and energy studying the wrong way. They love to just sit at a computer and then just watch the videos that have been assigned to them by their instructor or on their online ground school course, whatever it may be. And they just sit there and they stare at the screen and that's it. That takes hours of their time and yet they come away from it feeling like they've learned nothing. It's easy to sit down and read a textbook or one of the books that assigned to you by your instructor for hours, but that's definitely not the most efficient way to do it. So with that, I suggest really researching studying techniques. My favorite one was the, I'm going to butcher how to say it, Pomodoro technique. Essentially, you study for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. Study for another 25 minutes and then take a 5-minute break. You do that 4 times and then you get a longer break at the end of it. That's a really good way to pace yourself, and it's just enough time to consume enough information to where you'll be able to actively recall it later on. Piggybacks into the next step, which is practice actively recalling. It's so easy to sit down and just read a book, right? And you feel like you're getting the information, but then as soon as you're done reading it, somebody asks you a question about it, and all of a sudden, you don't remember a single thing that you just read. So this is where things like flashcards and Quizlets really come in handy. Don't try to consume every little bit of information that you can get your hands on. Focus on the key factors and then understand the fundamentals behind those key factors. Once you understand how something works, it makes learning the bigger picture and also those little minute details easier because you're able to go back and reread it and understand it later on. Switch up the different ways that you're studying. One day, focus on the videos on the online ground school. Maybe the next day, then you switch over to a textbook, reading the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. Then the next day, maybe you listen to a podcast or an audiobook. Switch up the way that you're consuming media so it's not just the same thing every single day. Tip number 3, take breaks and avoid overloading your mind. Here's something that I feel like a lot of student pilots forget is that your brain needs a break. Your brain is, I think it's technically an organ, but for the sake of this, we're going to consider it a muscle. The more you use it, it's going to get fatigued. If you're working, and then flying, and then studying all the time, your brain's going to get exhausted. When you are studying, use that Pomodoro technique. Make sure that you have breaks built into your studying. Go for a walk, hit the gym, go hang out with some friends. Take that much needed rest time that you need. And one really big tip, if you are this applies more for the people that are at probably more of an accelerated program, but make sure that you're taking at least 1 or 2 days off per week. Don't focus on flying. Don't fly, don't study. If you can, line it up with your days off from work if you're working on top of that too. Take time to just rest and rejuvenate yourself. Stepping away from flying for a day or 2 days each week helps you learn faster because your brain actually has time to absorb all of the information that you're giving it. Tip number 4, manage your frustrations and your plateaus. Every single student pilot that has ever flown has hit a point where they just feel stuck. Maybe your landings aren't consistent or you keep messing up radio calls. It's completely normal. And yet focusing and dwelling on those plateaus and those frustrations takes your mind away from making progress. If you're so focused on screwing some things up and getting frustrated with it, you are never going to progress. Don't focus on perfection, especially in your private pilot stage. It is you learning. That's like saying the first time that you learn how to drive, you become an expert at it. Think about it like this. The minimum hour requirement for you to get your private pilot certificate is 40 hours. Think about when you were learning to drive. Or I saw this awesome analogy in the comments the other day. Think about learning to ride a skateboard. Both of those, you are going to require so much more time than 40 hours. Don't expect to be an expert and be perfect in every single way by the time you take your check ride. You want to focus on making progress. Every single flight, you want to get 1% better than your previous flight. If you aren't perfect, don't beat yourself up over it. Ask your flight instructor for a fresh approach. If there's something that you're really struggling with and your instructor just keeps saying the same thing over and over and over, ask for them to explain it to you in a different way. Ask for them to demonstrate it to you in a different way. Ask for them to do a ground with you. Ask for them to send you YouTube videos. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. So if there's something that you're plateaued on, spice it up a little bit. Don't keep trying the same thing over and over. If there's something that you're really struggling, like landings or a certain maneuver, take a step back and go work on something else. If you've been doing pattern work, takeoffs and landings for the last 5 flights and you're not getting any better, ask your instructor if you can take a chance and go out and practice maneuvers again. Go out and practice emergency procedures again. Whatever it may be, take a step back from what you're trying to learn, go work on different skills, and then come back ready to retackle it again. I could go back into my logbook that I had as a student pilot, and I probably had 20 straight flights of just learning how to land the plane. Nothing but takeoffs and landings. It's so tough. In fact, I did my flight training in 2 completely different sessions. I did about 20 hours when I was in high school, and then we got to the point where we were practicing takeoffs and landings, and I just couldn't get it. I was so bad, and I got so frustrated with myself that I quit. And then I didn't find my way back to flight training until after I graduated high school. I took about a 2-year-long break from it because I wasn't good at managing these plateaus. Every single student pilot deals with these. Find ways to manage it and find ways to push through it, because I promise you that you will get there in the end. Tip number 5, find ways to stay motivated. Flight training can feel like a grind, but staying motivated is going to make or break your flight training. Tips I have for staying motivated: I love watching YouTube videos. I love YouTube. If you couldn't tell, I'm making YouTube videos now. I love YouTube. There's so many fantastic flying videos out on YouTube. Everyone from airline pilots sharing their experiences down to the general aviation pilot flying around and island hopping. There's so many good motivational videos. And in fact, the video that got me interested in flying in the first place is an old video by Swain Martin. Watch those videos. Remember why you got into it. If you're getting really frustrated and burned out, ask your instructor if you can go on a fun flight. So for me, I'm pretty close to downtown Indianapolis. So I've done this a couple of times in the past. If one of my students is really struggling with something, I'll suggest that we go do a flyover of downtown Indianapolis. It's just something different and it's fun. Take a fun, scenic flight where the primary focus of it isn't necessarily training. Obviously, every time you're in the plane, you're learning new things, but that's not the main goal of it. Remember why you got into it. Another huge tip for staying motivated is surround yourself and build up a community of fellow pilots. There's not a lot of pilots in the world. I think when I graduated high school, I think there were like 2 other people that were interested in flying in my grade. Build a sense of community with people around you that are going through the same things you are. Join Facebook groups, join Discord channels, hang out at the FBO, make new friends at the flight school. Build that sense of community, and that's gonna help you stay motivated, and that's going to hold you accountable. Flying isn't just about passing the check ride. You got into flying because you love flying in aviation. You didn't get into it to pass the check ride. Find ways to keep that excitement alive, even on those really tough days. Tip number 6, in the most important tip that I am going to give you. You will not succeed in flight training if you do not have this. Tip number 6. Remember your why. Remember the big picture of why you wanted to do this. The best way to finish your flight training is to remember why you started in the first place. Flight training is hard. It's super hard. But remember that every single pilot before you has gone through these same struggles that you have, and they made it through. So can you. Write down the reason you want to become a pilot and put it somewhere that you're going to see relatively frequently. Put it on a sticky note and hang it on your mirror. Put it on a piece of paper and keep it in your flight bag. Write it in the front of your logbook. Write it somewhere that you're going to see it often. Another tip I have is to set small goals and milestones. Set the goal to solo. Celebrate the goal when you go on your first cross country. Enjoy going on night flights. And celebrate these little milestones. Not many people can say that they know how to fly a plane. Not many people can say that they've soloed a plane. Enjoy those milestones. Celebrate it. Be happy about it. Celebrate even the smallest of wins. Every pilot has tough days, but the ones that are able to push through it are the ones who succeed. Burnout doesn't mean that you're not suitable to become a pilot. Usually it just means that you need to change up your approach. Trust me, once you pass your check ride, once you get through your flight training, you're gonna look back and you're gonna say it was so worth it. Now I wanna hear from you. What are some of the reasons that you've been burned out in your flight training? What helped you push through it? Tell me in the comments down below. If you like this style of video, hit that like button. And if you wanna see more videos like this, also subscribe. I have an infinite amount of tips that I want to share with the student pilot community and the instructor community alike. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.